If you are facing any issues related to sound or connectivity, please write it in the comment box below. We shall be starting our session soon as we are waiting for some of our participants to join the session. Good afternoon everyone. I hope you are well and heartily today. Webinar is on GDPR compliance for your organization, principles, rights and opportunities. I am Rohit Madhvi, your host will be with you forming 1 hour. Talking about CUNIX. CUNIX is a management consulting firm having experience of more than 25 years with 350 plus satisfied clients present in 19 plus countries. CUNIX is a CMMI Institute partner organization with 250 plus CMMI appraisals. Also in 2016, we were among top 10 partners of CMMI Institute, USA for new appraisals. I am glad to introduce you to our presenter, Ms. Vaishali Mutalik. Ms. Vaishali is an information security evangelist and cyber security and data privacy consultant with more than 28 years of overall experience and more than 24 years of professional IT experience in IT project management and assurance and IT solution delivery. She did number of certifications in information security and security like CISA, ISMS, GDPR, HIPAA, ITSM and ITIL. Also, I would like to request you all to write your queries in the comment box. We shall take them up in the Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. Now, I would request Ms. Vaishali Mutalik to take over the session.
So let us start. Let's start today's webinar with GDPR compliance for your organizations, principles, rights, and the opportunities. It's a brief, information about my profile. With Rohit, is already given an information on that. I'm an experienced around more than 28 years in industry. I'm a CISA certified auditor, ISO 20001, and GDPR consultant. Yeah, so let's understand what is GDPR. So by this time we all know that what is GDPR and what exactly is GDPR mean by. Understanding in detail in today's webinar will help you out to how to have a compliance for your organizations in terms of GDPR. So GDPR is basically based on providing a clarity and consistency for the protection of personal data. General Data Protection Regulations (GDPR) imposes some new rules on the organizations in the European Union and those that offer goods and services to the people in the EU or that collect and analyze data tied to the European Union citizens no matter where they are located. They can be located anywhere in the world. If they are providing these services to the European Union, they need to be GDPR compliant. So GDPR compliance focuses on the core aspects of enhanced personal privacy rights, increased duty of protecting data, mandatory breach reporting, and significant penalties for non-compliance. This is where we can understand very easily what are the broad terms which is used under GDPR and how are they placed in. So data protections model under the GDPR has been developed by European Data Protection Board. It is under the supervision of, and along that it is an Information Commissioner's Office called as a ICO office in UK as a supervisory authority. So if you look at the graphical presentation which has been help you out to understand the GDPR regulations, there are data controllers. Data controllers are the organizations who actually understands and guides to process the data. So data controller or the organization for that. Then we have a data processor. Data processing are those companies who process the data on behalf of data controller. You can say they are the vendors or they are the sub-processors, or they are the people who process it. We can call it as an outsourcing of the processing activity. What they do process activity? They do an data subject data. The individual's data collected by the data controller can be processed by the data controller or by the data processor. There are called as a third parties. The parties beyond these three are called as a data third parties. They don't require to inform, they don't require disclosures. Third countries beyond the EU territories are known as a third countries. So here India, US, whatever the countries beyond the all European countries becomes a third countries. So the third countries requires a guarantees that they will comply with the data protection model under GDPR. Any complaint in relation to the data which can be done by data subject to a Information Security Commissioner's office in case in UK or a supervisory authority in any other countries. What are the key challenges to address the GDPR? So there are the challenges are, first challenge will focus on personal privacy. Individuals have the right to access their personal data, correct errors in the personal data, erase their personal data, and object to processing of their personal data and export of their personal data. So probably if we discuss about today's world, a lot of things are not available in of any organizations in terms of exporting the personal data or objecting the data. If you look at the kind of insurance company, suppose we have an insurance, probably if we reach out to the insurance company and say that you export my personal data and I would like to take it to another insurance company, they will not be in a position to do. That's what the GDPR has brought into all the EU residents. They have provided a right to the data subjects. Then there's the controls and the notifications. So this will need to send data using an appropriate security, notify authorities of personal data breaches, obtain an appropriate consents for processing the data, and keep records detailing data processing activity. So if you look at this, the any data which is obtained need to be used by the organizations for a specific purpose only. The data obtained for specific purpose cannot be utilized or provided in other marketing agencies. The third part is transparent policies. Organizations are required to provide a clear notice of data collections, outtime, processing purpose, and use the cases. Define the data retention for the deletion policy. If you look at it, say transparent policies, we all use in kind of social media platforms. So when we look at the social media platform, there are a lot of data which we are inputting on every day basis through our social accounts, which is held and retained, and the data is retained by the social platforms. So data need to be retention and the deletion has to be defined. When we deactivate our account, the data still resides with the social media accounts provider. Then we are focusing on the IT and the IT training. Organizations will need to train on the privacy personnel and the employees, audit and update data policies, employ a data protection officer if required. Data protection officer is known as a DPO, and create and manage complaint vendor contracts. These are the key challenges which we face in the GDPR compliance activity. What does this mean for your data? This means that protecting customer privacy with the GDPR is the object of a GDPR regulations. How can we do this activity? It's a better data governance, tools for better transparency, record keeping and reporting. The second object is improve data policies to provide a control to data subjects and ensure a lawful processing which is happening with the data. What's important is a stricter control on where personal data is stored and how it is used. If you are storing the data on the locals environment or cloud server, so we need to control the environment, and also it should be monitored how the data is being utilized. When we are preparing for the GDPR, we have three simple steps to follow. Those seems to be very simple steps. I know it's very difficult to follow the steps, but to simplify, the first process will be simplify your privacy journey. Elevate your privacy practices with compliances. So you need to understand what are the current compliance that your organization has and how can we attain the required compliance level. Uncover the risk and take action. How can we do the uncover risk? We need to do one gap assessment. There are specific terminology which is used in the GDPR known as a DPIA. We need to understand that as well. Uncover the risk. Do a risk assessment and take a risk action. The action can be risk transfer, risk mitigations, the way we can manage the risk. Leverage guidance from the expert. Use expert services to meet your privacy, security and compliance goals. When you are simplifying your privacy journey, there are 3 rules which they have given. So to summarize the entire activity of the GDPR, the first is process all in one place. So whatever the processes which you have in the finance, the HR, the marketing activity, your business development, your technical aspects, all of the organizations is to process in one place. Analyze processing in a single system. Simplify data management, governance, classifications and oversight. Maximize your protections. Protect data with industry-leading encryptions and security technology. There are a lot of technology which is being used nowadays. Use whichever suits your requirements. That's always up to date and assessed by the experts. Streamline your compliance. Utilize the services that already comply with complex, internationally recognized standards to more easily meet your new requirements, such as facilitating the request of data subjects. So these are the 3 simple steps which one understands. So whatever you process all in one place, maximize your protection levels and streamline your compliance. And the compliance on a consistent basis. The moment we have a data breach, there is a penalty to levy to the organization. Uncover risks and take actions. How are we going to do this process? First, discover all the data across all the systems. When I say all the systems, as I said, it can be your finance, it can be your HR, it can be your marketing tool, it can be some of your SaaS model. So whatever the data, whatever the system you are using, discover the data across the systems. Easily discover and log all the resources. Increase the visibility with auditing capabilities. Identify where personal info resides across devices, apps and platforms. So probably you will be having multiple systems in organizations. Some of the data must be residing in your cloud environment, some in the local servers. So you need to identify all set of information which your organizations hold. The second step will be the govern access and processing. Enforce use policies and access controls across your organization and systems. Classify data for simplified compliance. So to classify data with a high importance, low importance data. Easily respond to data requests and transparency requirements. Protect through the entire life cycle. So the moment you acquire the data or the obtain the data till you delete the data, you should maintain the entire life cycle of the data. Need a protection at each step of your data life cycle. Protect user credentials with risk-based conditional access. Safeguard data with the encryption technologies. Rapidly respond to the intrusion with the built-in controls to detect and respond to data breaches. You should, as we have a very short window of 72 hours in GDPR data breach reporting, we need to have a built-in controls to take a data response and data breaches. How do we need to start? If we look for a compliance for your organizations, what will be the steps we will have to follow? Discover, manage, protect, and report. These are the 4 simple steps we need to follow. As we discussed in earlier slide, discover is what? Identify what personal data you have and where it resides. Probably a customer contact details with the personalized email ID is also an important piece of information which comes under the data, which need to be protected. Manage. Govern all personal data is used and accessed. Protect. Establish a security controls to prevent, detect and respond to vulnerabilities and data breaches. And report. Keep required documentation, manage data requests and breach notifications. These are the 4 important steps to start a GDPR process. Now when we say discover, let us understand what we mean by these 4 terminologies. The first step is to discover. Identify what personal data you have and where it resides. So what do you mean by personal data? So what is in scope? Any data that helps you to identify a person. Say how can we identify a person? With the name, email addresses, social media post, physical, psychological and genetic informations, medical informations, locations, bank details, IP addresses, cookies and cultural identity. All these can be a piece of information wherein we can reach out to or identify a person. How can we do this activity? With the inventory. Identify where the data is collected and stored. It can be your email accounts, documents, a database which you have, renewable media, you have a pen drive, USB ports, the email disk, metadata, you have log files and the backups. These all data need to have an inventory of these informations. This is how we can discover the data within the organization. And next step. The next step of this entire life cycle is to manage. Govern how personal data is used and accessed within organizations. Data governance, defining the policies, roles and responsibilities for the management and use of personal data. How can we have this? So when you look at the data, these are the where data resides. It can be at rest, which is in backup, is in process, is in transit, storing, recovery levels, archiving, returning and disposals. So once we identify this data, we need to classify the data. So data classification is at organizing and labeling the data to ensure a proper handling. So how can we do this activity is by data type, sensitivity, how sensitive is data, context and the use. What is going to be the use of data? What kind of the importance we have? So if it's in sensitivity, you can say my Aadhaar card number or my PAN card number is a very sensitive information. So we need to understand that. Then ownership. So who has the ownership of the data? Who have the custodians? Administrators and users. So we have to identify data and also classify the data to manage the compliance. Understand, to have a compliance in GDPR. So once we identify the data, going ahead what we need to do is protect. Establish a security controls to prevent, detect and respond to vulnerabilities and data breaches. Preventing data attacks and protecting your data is from physical data center protection. You need to understand where data center is put up, is in which seismic zones, network security, your storage security, the COM security, identity management, access control, the encryption, and the risk mitigations. Now once we understand the protection levels, we detect and respond to the breaches, monitoring for detecting system intrusions. They are system monitoring, breach identifications, calculating the impact, planned response, and disaster recovery, and notifying DPIA of the customers. Once we protect information, we need to report, keep required documentation, manage data, request, and breach notifications. So record keeping is enterprise will need to record the purpose of processing, classifications of personal data, third parties with access to the data, organizational and technical security measures, and data retention times. What are the data retention practices the organization has? It to be analyzed. So what are the reporting tools? Implement reporting capabilities. We can have a cloud server process documentations, we have audit logs, the breach notifications, the handling data subject request, governance reporting, and the compliance reviews. Some of the way we can have a reporting tools. So once we understand this process, next we GDPR territorial scope, rights, and the principles. These are the territorial loops. Basically, either the GDPR compliance is applicable to your organizations or not. So important factor is how GDPR is applies to your organizations. So in this case, if you understand this, if you look at the graphical presentations, is the enterprise is in your EU. If your enterprise has an office in European Union, GDPR applies to you. That is yes, the GDPR applies to your organizations. If it's no, does the data subject resides or stay in EU? So who are data subjects? So resident of European Union who are there, or the people who resides in European Union are the data subjects. So these are these in the data subjects. If it's no, then is the data subject currently traveling to EU? An Indian employee or a current company's employee is deputed in European Union. In that case, is traveling to European Union or he resides in European Union, he is termed as a data subject and his data need to be protected. Does the processing relate to the offering the goods and the services to your organizations? In that case, GDPR applies to your organizations. And does the processing relate to the monitoring and the behavior of EU? In this case also, the GDPR applies to your organizations. So if you look at this, and as an example, and we have a kind of Hotel Taj who has visitors coming in from say European Union or say from UK and who resides in Hotel Taj say for even a day. But while check-in, he submits his passports or he submits his documents to the Hotel Taj. In that case, the organizations in India, Hotel Taj, holds an information of an European Union data subject need to have a compliance for the organizations. If you consider this as an example, every organizations who has this set of information supporting data subject need to have a GDPR compliance in place. If there are some data subject rights, as we understood what is meant by data subjects, data subject is an individual who resides in EU or is a EU resident. They have been empowered with the rights under the GDPR. So we look at the rights, right to access. Individuals have the rights to access any personal data that has been collected about them. The rights to rectifications. Individuals have the right to require organizations to correct inaccurate personal data. If they have any kind of data which is held by them, it's not accurate, say email ID has changed or mobile number has changed, in that case, they have a right to rectifications. The right to be forgotten. Individuals have the right to have their personal data deleted and to prevent further collections. The right to restrict the processing. Individuals have the right to require organizations to restrict the processing of specific categories of personal data. Very important right is right to data portability. Individuals have the right to require the organizations to transfer the personal data to a recipient of their choice. The right to object. The individuals have the right to consent or withdraw the consent to the processing of their personal data, and the rights to in relation to the automated decision making and profiling. Individuals have the right to opt out of the use of their personal data by automated systems such as artificial intelligence. Where we use a lot of data, so automated decision making is not permitted under the GDPR. There are some principles which has been given in the GDPR regulations. The principles are for data collection and processing. The principles are basically, there are 7 principles, we call it as there, you can see there is a 6 principles. Ideally, it says that there has a 7 principles. The process lawfully, fairly and in a transparent manner. Collected for specific, explicit and legitimate purpose. Adequate, relevant and limited to what is necessary. Accurate and where necessary, keep update. Retained only for as long as it is necessary. Processed in an appropriate manner to maintain the security. And the last but not least, the principle is accountability for all these principles of data collections and data processing. GDPR compliance will require an holistic approach to a security. GDPR compliance is a compliance to maintain a trust of your customers. It can be attained by one is the holistic approach to security. So leadership in compliance is very important in terms of GDPR, and commitment by the organization to the transparency and the privacy. There are some practical steps to GDPR compliance. First, we'll look at the buying and support. We need to build top management, understand the risk and rewards, data protection and cyber risk on the risk register, budget and resources, and accountable director. We need to define the scope. So what is the scope of GDPR? The business units, the territories, the jurisdictions, they're all we require to have a GDPR compliance. Interfaces and the dependencies. Identify third-party relations in which you are the processor or the controller. Identify contract managers for them all. The third step where we find here is set up and project team. Who will be the part of the project team? You identify the stakeholders, identify the work streams, project plan and the communications plan. Once we do this activity of the project team alignment, we do and identify the related activities. So what are they? Ongoing and the planned projects or programs and the DPIA activity. The next step in the compliance is, first you need to align your policies and the procedures. Data handling classifications, the risk management policies, the data breach reporting, the data protections and security by designs. These are all the policies and the procedures we need to have in compliance. Then identify the high risk data flows. Once you understand the high risk data flows, understand the identify stakeholders, identify the work streams, project plan and the communication plans. Identify the internet facing IP addresses and the URLs. Ensure that there are up-to-date penetration tests. Ensure that there is an effective plan for the vulnerability evaluations. Next step will be identify high-risk database. So which are the high-risk database? HR database, your customer database, which contains and contact details and the payment cards. Mobile devices, your laptops, your phones, your iPads, which contains information. and initiate a feasibility study into deploying the encryption process. Now, empower your employees by creating a secure, productive enterprise. By way of trust, protect your organization's data and people. Collaborations. Create a productive workplace to enhance a diverse and work styles. A mobility. Enable your people to get the things done anywhere. And intelligence. Provide insights to drive faster, better business decisions. So once we understand the GDPR, the compliance requirements, there are some remedies, liabilities and the penalties of GDPR. Let's have a look what are the remedies in terms of GDPR. The first step in the GDPR compliance level is the data protection impact assessment. We call it as a DPIA. In a normal term, we call it as a gap assessments. Data protection impact assessments are an essential compliance tool under the GDPR. DPIs are mandatory in most cases when designing or modifying a process that involves PII, personally identifiable information of a data subject. They support the concept of privacy by design and by default. They are crucial in showing the supervisory authority that a business has been done everything it can to ensure that data is processed in accordance with the law. The object of DPIA activity as per the GDPR regulation is to identify the risk to PII, personally identifiable information, and thus minimize or prevent unlawful processing and data breaches. So these are some of the penalties under the GDPR. There are two sets of penalties under the GDPR. One set of penalty is 20 million euros or 4% of total worldwide annual turnover in the preceding financial years, whichever is higher. There are few articles which are mentioned here which will give you an idea. These are not the complete articles, but there are some articles specifically indicating the processing of personal data, unlawful processing, conditions for consent are some of the articles which you will have a 20 million euros or 4% of your global turnover as a penalty. Another set of penalties which is given by GDPR is 10 million euros or 2% of worldwide annual turnover in the preceding financial year, whichever is greater. Say the articles which is some of the articles from this penalty clause are child consent, data protection by design and by default, joint controllers, your notifications of the breaches, if your DPI assessments or DPO appointments are some of the clauses in penalties. Now when you look at understand the GDPR, we understood as well, we also spoke about either the organization need to have a GDPR compliance or not. The most important factor we understand is how the Indian industry landscape and the impact of the GDPR. In India, the organization's visibility of and control over what personal data collected and what is the use of personal data collected. We discussed about one example of checking to the hotel when a guy from the UK checks in Taj Hotel. So data is collected by the hotel, Taj Hotel, but what is the use of personal data and why it is collected? Is the organization sharing any personal information? If yes, with whom are they sharing this information? Is the organization has implemented a privacy by design program? A privacy by design wherein you need to implement the entire GDPR rules, data privacy laws into while developing the process in organizations. Has the organization carried out data privacy impact assessment, DPI documentation and the escalation paths? Do we have a tested breach response plans that meets GDPR's 72-hour notifications requirement? Have your organization has defined a roadmap for GDPR compliance? What is a cross-border data transfer strategy adopted by your organizations? Are you transferring some data from India to UK or any other countries in the European Union? What is the data transfer strategy which your organization has? How can an Indian company manage GDPR compliance? The organizations need to look at the following aspects as a part of their compliance efforts. Develop a vision and a strategy for compliance with the GDPR. Assess the gaps between your current compliance programs and the requirement of the GDPR and analyze risk. We spoke about the DPIA as a part of the analyzation process. Create accountability framework for data protection compliance. Develop the operational structures needed to facilitate compliance. Document processing activities and data flows. We discussed about what are the data we have, how we use the data, what is the data flows which is of administration. Review a lawful processing basis and a third-party contacts. Create processes for privacy by design and privacy impact and risk assessment. Identify and prioritize key remediation activity to reduce your risk profile. These are some of the steps which Indian companies can follow to attain a GDPR compliance. There are some challenges as well. When we say the Indian companies need to have a GDPR compliance, the big challenge is the weak data protection law in India. In India, we do not have currently any laws for the data protection. There are some new laws which are in process, will get, if it gets approved by the ministry, we will have the data protection laws in India. Because we know India is an outsourcing industry which is estimated to worth of 150 billion USDs and contributes nearly 9.3% of GDP. It has been one of the biggest markets for the Indian outsourcing sector, and India is relatively weak in data protection law, competitive than the other outsourcing markets in the space. The next important challenge which we face is the cross-border restrictions. Largely inflexible, GDPR reduces the extent to which the business can access risk and make decisions when it comes to data outside the EU. Indian companies would need to implement sufficient safeguards as required in GDPR. In order to transfer them outside the EU, thereby further increasing the compliance cost. The next important challenge which we face is a greater risk of penalties and limitations. Article 3, the territorial scope of GDPR, makes it very clear that the regulations on node processing takes place in EU or not. If an Indian company providing services to the European Union countries, the GDPR applies. They do not have need to have office in European Union. This means no business for Indian companies that do not comply with the GDPR or increase compliance cost for those who do risk and offer huge penalties when failing to do so. So these are some of the challenges which is there in GDPR compliance. The Indian industry landscape and the impact of the GDPR. Europe is an extensive marketplace for the ITS and BPO, the pharmaceutical industry in India. The size of IT industry, the top 2 EU member states estimated to be 155 to 220 billion USD. Thus, the Indian IT industry to keep continuing to do so business in Europe needs to comply with the GDPR. As we discussed, the GDPR has to have a holistic approach for data protections, and justified programs for the compliance will be regulated to demonstrate GDPR compliance. How can we do this activity? What is your organization's data footprint in EU? That is your data about your employees, consumers, and your clients. And our preparedness to provide an evidences for the GDPR compliance to you or US privacy regulators who may request so. Now, how should an Indian company prepare for the GDPR? So when you look at an Indian company's requirement for the GDPR compliance, the Indian companies need to be carefully look at the requirements of GDPR compliance. These are a few steps which they can follow on their own and understand. Review your existing policies and the procedures with the existing privacy programs. As we said, and if you refer to earlier discussions, you need to have a kind of experts who do a GDPR activity. The policies which a nation has need to have a compliance with the GDPR regulations. Conduct a data discovery exercise, maintaining documentations in order to demonstrate visibility of the personal data processed. Impart data privacy training to employees or vendors and subcontractors. Implement and processes to import data protection impact assessment and data subject requests and privacy by design. Review and update the contracts signed with the third-party vendors. Pseudonymizations and encryptions required while processing of your personal data. Reviewing and updating configurations of data loss preventions, security informations, and event management, SIM, and other technical solutions. Equipping the security ecosystems with effective identity and access management solutions. Reviewing data retention schedules, cross-border data transfers, privacy notices, consent, etc. Logging monitoring and the incident management solutions. So these are the very important steps if you are going for a GDPR compliance for your organizations. So what we do at CUNIX, we support our customers with the contractual commitments. We will stand behind you with the contractual commitments for the compliance services to meet and stringent security requirements, support customers in managing data subject requests, provide documentation that enables the customers to demonstrate the compliance for all the other requirements of GDPR applicable to the processes and the more, and the incident response supports. Our goal is to simplify the compliance of our customers to the GDPR. We at CUNIX are providing and offering the services into the business process improvement. When we look at the services, we have a consulting, we do auditing services and other services. We have a CMI level, ISO 9001, Six Sigma, process documentations, process implementations, and reengineering and validations. In the auditing services, we take care of the CMI appraisals, internal audits, process verifications, QMS gap analysis, process gap analysis, and your RS gap analysis. Quality outsourcing services which we do have, we also do our resource deployment trainings. In information security and risk management solutions, we have ISO 27001, we also process an ISO 20000 and ITSM, ISO 22301, ISO 31000, HIPAA, SOC, PCI DSS, and business continuity. The auditing services in this, we provide an IT infrastructure audit, VAPT, data center audit, and IT general control risk audit. We have also other services in this segment is resource deployment and the trainings. The performance management, we take care of all the BSc, KPR, scoreboard, employment verifications, competency verification scoreboards, and we also conduct workshops and HR questionnaires and technical items. At the CUNIX, we have a learning academy with the quality and the process improvement trainings, IT skills development trainings, and information cybersecurity trainings. You can reach out to us. These are the people who are the key professionals in the CUNIX. We'll take care of your requirements. You can meet Manjit Singh and Savio. You can make a note of these numbers, are also available with the Rohit. You can provide them. Be happy if you have any questions about the GDPR compliance of your organizations. Yes, sir. Ritesh, you have a question that if there is no certification for GDPR, how can we be sure we are fully compliant after taking a consulting from any consultant? That's a very good question, Ritesh. I do agree with what your questions is, but there are some certain certifications across the globe which are there. wherein there is no certifying body in the across the globe. So we need to do this activity in a consistent manner. The consultant will provide you all kind of expertise and experience to attain a GDPR compliance. And one of the important part which we discussed was a GDPR training. So we also train you guys to understand the GDPR regulations. So certification is basically, it's a kind of certification from the consultant, from the certifying companies who possess a sufficient knowledge on the GDPR regulations. Yes, Ritesh, you have a question about if you have an organization size of around 75 people. So what is the size of that implementation? All we'll definitely discuss offline. I would request you to put your number on the chat, or my team will get back to you on this. Yes, we need to understand your processes of your organizations, and we'll definitely give you the best timelines, and so you can attend the compliance at the earliest. Okay, Rohit, any queries from any participant?
No, ma'am.
Fine. So, shall we close with the presentations and the today's webinar?
Yes, we can close.
Sure.
So, okay. Thank you, all of you,
You all.
for attending this session. And thank you, Miss Vaishali, for giving this wonderful webinar
Thank
on
you so much,
GDPR.
Rohit, for arranging nice presentations.
Thank you, ma'am.